watching Movie Guide. I'm your host, Evie Bear Carroll, and we're at the red carpet of Jesus Revolution. Let's talk to some of the cast and crew.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
So did you feel like you grew from doing it, and were you kind of, the character is so interesting, right? Lonnie is an interesting dude, even if you don't show his whole life in there, but he's an interesting dude.
He was a man that was anointed by God, and like many of the apostles, he was a flawed human being. I mean, if Jesus can use Judas Iscariot, he can use a guy like Lonnie Frisbee. And Lonnie Frisbee didn't sell Jesus out. Lonnie Frisbee did his best to serve God and to promote God, and he was a very wounded man. And later in life, some of those wounds caught up with him. But his heart was for Jesus from the beginning, from the time he was a child. And so getting the opportunity to play somebody that has those flaws, it's an interesting thing to play as an actor.
And he was passionate, and it kind of made me think, I got to step outside the walls, right? Your character brings everybody in, sits on the ground. Like, it doesn't need to be so structured. We just have to tell the truth.
That's right. There was one of the guys that I talked to who was with Lonnie at Calvary Chapel at this time said, like, hanging out with Lonnie felt dangerous because you never knew what he was going to do. He could literally they could be in a diner, and he would literally then all of a sudden, if the Spirit called him to stand up on a table and start proclaiming the gospel, he would stand up on the table and everybody would be like, uh-oh, there goes Lonnie.
For you, Greg, how is it to see this? You're an amazing pastor, but seeing it where your story's all out there, the drug use and all that, how is that for you?
Well, I think, it was sort of an unusual story when I was a kid to come from a home where my mother was divorced so many times and she was an alcoholic. Most of my friends lived in intact homes. But nowadays, with so many people coming from broken homes, my story is slightly more normative. And I think it's a story that shows God can change things. We don't get to determine what hand we're dealt in life, but we determine how we will react to it. And so this story, because now we have time to look at what happened. This happened, 50 years ago, right? Or so. So now we can see, how did this story play out? And so you can look back with 2020 hindsight and say, God intervened and changed us and changed our family. And so I believe Jesus Christ can break the cycle of sin in a person's life.
And especially now, because it's been such a hard time for people over the last few years, and with social media and affecting the younger people with depression and anxiety. So how would you hope this?
Hope. We just pray that it brings hope to a younger generation. I think for us, we were going through so many similar things, searching for truth, searching for purpose and meaning, something really worth living for. And I believe that the answer is in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you, it can turn your life around. I've seen it work in my life and my sister's life. Young people, don't waste your life searching in all the wrong places. God has the answer for you. And this movie is showing people that there is hope, that there is another way to live, and a way to have direction and guidance in life in a world where everything is just sort of going every which way and loose. We need to know that there is a right way to live, and God has provided that for us.
It's also great for the church because it shows us, it reminds us, go beyond the walls. We can't be so confined to our church walls.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Chuck Smith, who's played by Kelsey Grammer so powerfully in this movie, is that he was an older guy who left his comfort zone and was willing to take a risk by letting in Lonnie Frisbee, played by Jonathan Roumie. You see, it was sort of like nitroglycerin. It was sort of this explosive response. And I think that we need to leave our comfort zone as Christians and say, how can we communicate with this generation? How can we reach them? And I think the other thing is proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. We think every generation is unique. We thought our generation was unique. And I'm not saying today's young people are not facing a lot of intense pressures, and I do think it's harder perhaps to be a young person right now than any other time. Having said that, the answer doesn't change. The answer is a relationship with Christ. So we need to continue to articulate that in an understandable way.
You're actually playing a character in here, and it's kind of a fun character, right?
Yeah, well, I got a chance to get dressed up and hair, or afro and sideburns, and Yeah. So it was a lot of fun, and it was also such a great project to be a part of.
I love that it's about going, it reminded us even today, like, because I grew up in the church. My dad didn't, but I did. And so going beyond the walls, right, it encouraged me to do that. So what would you say about that kind of message to Christians?
I think the message in the film is vital. We got to get out of our comfort zone and be open to where people are. So often we don't go beyond the four walls of the church.
Yeah.
And as a result, we restrict those who come in. So I think this movie preaches being open, welcoming everybody. We are all God's children, and we all deserve a place in the kingdom.
What would you like teens or like the younger generation to do?
To know that the search for self is also the search for God. And the more that we find God, the more we find ourselves. And don't allow tradition or don't allow people that may say negative words to get you to have a comfortable excuse not to pursue God, right? So when you see the movie, the younger kids in the film are pursuing. First, they don't know. They're trying to find themselves. And then once they find God, they discover more about themselves. And I think that message can resonate, especially with our youth today.
So this is amazing. My dad even loved it.
Wow.
He loved it.
Ted Bear, that's a huge, anytime I can get Ted Bear to shed a tear, it's a good day. It's a story that, it's really surprising because it's a period of time that really happened, and a lot of people don't know their history, but it really happened among the hippie culture at a time where Christianity was both extremely overt and it was counterculture. It was for the outsiders and the rebels. And it was interesting to see those two things that typically don't go together. So what it did was a lot of people from, growing up in the church, they saw their history. But then a lot of people outside the church, they're like, wow, that's rebellious and that's something that I'm interested in. And so it's a common ground for people to speak the same language, to have them engage with faith in a way that's very disarming.
And there were some quirky characters like Lonnie and stuff. And so how was it that you guys knew what to put in it and, kind of creating the art?
With my brother and John Gunn and the writers, they did their research and they worked really hard to try to make something that was an authentic portrait of the time. And there was so many colorful characters from that time period. So as John got obsessed with the time period, and Lonnie Frisbee is one of the most complex characters that's ever been in one of our films, and very complicated guy. And Jonathan Roumie from The Chosen just plays him to a T. He just brings him to life. And so that was just like a slow pitch softball. But then on top of that, as we talked to Laurie, the pastor from Harvest, Greg was like, well, I was a 16-year-old kid that was one of the drug-addicted kids that was on the front lines. He's like, I lived it. And so we got into his love story with him and Kathy, and there's this young element to it that it's a great cast.
You were so cute in the movie. How much is this your character, because your personality? Because I was like, I like this girl. I want to be friends with her.
Oh, that means so much to me. Listen, a lot of it's Kathy, but I think you got to infuse yourself into everything a little bit.
Yeah. And so she has a character arc, she changes. So can you talk about the changes?
Yeah, she starts off, she's kind of a party girl. She's, trying to find her way, find herself. And I think she just thinks that's what she should be doing because that's what everybody else is doing. And then her sister overdosing is a real wake-up call for her. And I think that I'm sort of like that, in that if something like that happened to me, I would change course, And so that was really beautifully written in the movie and really easy to play when you have some strong circumstances like that. And I just love that Greg follows her and they go through it together and they figure it out together. And I'm proud of the performance, I'm proud of the movie, and I'm really excited for people to see it.
How was this for you when you're initially reading the script? Were faith elements part of the reason you wanted to do it, or what was kind of the pull?
It was the perfect melding of everything that I was looking for and desiring to do. And I would definitely say, though, that the faith aspect was the tip of the spear.
And I thought it was interesting because it didn't shy away. I was talking to Devon. It doesn't shy away from heavy things. So what would you hope younger audiences got from that?
I think I would want younger audiences to take away the idea and just the fact that sin is out there, sin is real, and it might look different for other people, but grace is for everyone. We
do need to get out of the church, the church walls. So what would you like to say about that?
No, look, I mean, we need to get out of the church walls. We need to understand that there are people out there that are hurting, that like there's too much hate going on in America. We need to love people. We need to love and bring them in. And there's no better story than Jesus Revolution, obviously based on a true story.
I thought this was an amazing time right now, too, because, you know, the 2 years of COVID, like the spikes of like anxiety and depression and stuff. And so, like, what hope this brings.
It brings incredible. I mean, coming out of, that was one of the things we did. We tweaked the script a little bit based on what COVID is doing. And it's like, look, we want the theme of this film to be unity and love because people need it so much. They've been beat up so much, right? Whether they've lost jobs or lost family members to the virus and whatnot. And a lot of people lose hope at the end of the day. They're losing hope. And so we hope the movie will instill hope and bring hope back to our country.
So this was amazing. What, you know, how are you excited to come here tonight to support?
You know, it's like Kevin Downs, obviously, you know, and I started producing so many years ago, and the Irwins have been doing such good work for so long, and so obviously I love those guys. And this is a movie that I think is so timely to be released right now. That's also a really cool movie. So in a time where hardly anything can make it in theaters, you know, I believe that this movie will inspire and encourage people in a different way.
Especially, you know, after social media is so intense for younger audiences. And this talks about like going beyond the walls of your church, right? Like getting out there and talking to people about Jesus. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like it's such a cool way to bring, you know, I mean, it's a 70s piece, you know? I mean, how often do we ever get those? You know, like, you know, period pieces. And the Jesus Revolution obviously has been timeless. So, you know, the clips that I've seen on this movie are so inspiring. I'm so excited for the cast being in it, and I just think it's going to be fun to watch it go out, and I believe the Lord will bless it too.
That's a wrap from the red carpet of Jesus Revolution. Make sure to check out the review at movieguide.org.